Late one evening, a faint, heartbreaking whimper echoed under an old stone bridge. A group of passers-by stopped, drawn by the sound, but what they discovered beneath the shadows was far beyond anything they could have imagined. A story of survival courage and a secret that would change everything. The sound was faint at first, barely audible over the rush of the nearby creek. It was late evening, and the air under the old stone bridge was damp and cold. As Emma and her younger brother Lucas walked home from their volunteer work at the local shelter, they froze in their tracks. A soft, pitiful cry echoed through the night, a sound so raw and full of despair that it stopped them in their tracks. "Did you hear that?" Lucas asked, his voice trembling slightly. Emma nodded, gripping the flashlight she always carried in her bag. The siblings exchanged a glance. Both feeling the same uneasy pull to investigate, they approached the bridge cautiously, their shoes crunching on the gravel path. As they got closer, the crying grew louder, more urgent. Emma aimed the flashlight under the bridge. The beam slicing through the darkness at first, all they saw was scattered debris and shadows dancing on the stone walls. Then the light caught movement, a small figure cowering in the corner. It was a dog, but not just any dog. The animal was covered in mud, its fur matted and tangled, and its thin frame suggested weeks without proper food. It shivered violently, trying to press itself further into the stone wall, as if hoping to disappear. But what struck Emma and Lucas most was its eyes, large, terrified, and filled with a strange intelligence that seemed to plead for help. "Hey, buddy," Emma said softly, kneeling to avoid startling the animal. Lucas held his breath, watching as his sister inched closer. Suddenly the dog's gaze darted to something behind it. Emma redirected the flashlight, and what they saw made her gasp. Behind the dog, nestled in a crude burrow made of sticks and leaves, were 3 tiny puppies. Their eyes were barely open, their tiny bodies curled up against each other for warmth. The dog wasn't just a stray, it was a mother, and she was guarding her pups with every ounce of strength she had left. "This isn't just a rescue," Lucas whispered, his voice filled with urgency. "This is a family." Emma nodded, her mind racing. They couldn't leave the animals here, not in this state, but moving them would be challenge, especially with the protective mother eyeing them wearily. The question wasn't just how to help, it was how to gain their trust. Emma and Lucas knew they needed a plan. The mother dog's protective instincts were clear. Every time Emma shifted closer, the dog growled low in her throat, her body curling tighter around her pups. The flashlight's beam revealed her ribs sticking out sharply, her exhaustion evident in the droop of her ears and the heaviness in her movements. "We can't just grab them," Elsie whispered, kneeling beside Emma. "She won't let us. We need to calm her down." Emma nodded, digging through her bag. She always carried dog treats from the shelter, just in case she encountered strays, pulling out a handful. She extended her arm slowly toward the mother, careful to avoid direct eye contact. "Hey, girl," she murmured softly. "It's okay, we're not here to hurt you." The dog's growl deepened at first, her body taut with tension, but as the scent of food reached her nose, her growl turned to a low whine. She sniffed the air cautiously, her gaze flickering between Emma and Lucas. "I think she's interested," Lucas whispered, holding his breath. "Keep going." Emma inched closer, her hand steady despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. The dog hesitated, her eyes darting to her pups, as if weighing the risk. Finally, with a tentative movement, she stretched her neck forward and took the treat from Emma's hand. She chewed slowly, her way eyes never leaving Emma's face. "That's it, girl," Emma said gently, her voice soothing. "You're doing great. We're here to help." Encouraged by the progress, Lucas joined in placing a water bottle and an old t-shirt on the ground. He poured some water into the cap and slid it toward the dog, who sniffed it cautiously before lapping it up. The sight was heartbreaking. She was so dehydrated that it seemed she could barely stop drinking as the minutes ticked by. The tension in the air began to eat ease. The dog's growl subsided, replaced by quiet, watchful silence. Emma extended another treat this time, setting it closer to her when the dog stepped forward to take it. She noticed something strange. The pads of her paws were raw and bleeding, as though she had been traveling over rough terrain for days or even weeks. She's been through so much. Emma whispered, her heart aching. "We need to get her out of here." Lucas nodded, his expression serious, but how she's not going to leave her pups, and I don't think she trusts us enough to let us carry them. Emma sat back on her heels, thinking. Then an idea struck her. We need to create a safe space, somewhere she feels like her pups will be protected if she sees we're helping. She might follow Lucas. Nodded, pulling his jacket off. He began arranging it into a makeshift bed, while Emma carefully laid out more treats in a trail leading to the jacket. They worked quietly, their movements deliberate and non-threatening. The mother dog watched them intently, her body still coiled protectively around her puppies. When the setup was ready, Lucas knelt down and whispered, "It's all up to her." Now Emma extended her hand one last time, this time holding a treat and gesturing toward the jacket. "Come on, girl," she coed softly. "It's safe. You and your babies can rest." The dog hesitated, her eyes flickering between Emma Lucas and her pups. The air felt thick with antacid pat as she took one cautious step forward, then another. She sniffed the jacket, her tail flicking uncertainly. Finally, as if making up her mind, she turned back to her pups and gently nudged them with her nose. Lucas's eyes widened. She's moving them one by one. The mother carefully picked up her puppies in her mouth and carried them to the makeshift bed each time she returned for another pup. Emma and Lucas held their breath, afraid any sudden movement would break her fragile trust. But the dog's determination was clear. She was taking the chance they were offering. When all three puppies were settled on the jacket, the mother lay down beside them, her body shielding them like a fortress. Her wary eyes met Emma, but this time there was no growl, only a quiet, exhausted acceptance. "We did it," Lucas whispered, a grin breaking across his face. "Now we just have to get them to the shelter." Emma nodded, though her heart was heavy. "We can't carry them all the way back like this. We need a car or a crate, something to keep them safe during the trip." Lucas pulled out his phone, his fingers fumbling as he dialed the number for their shelter supervisor, Megan. When she answered, Lucas quickly explained the situation. "We found a mother and her pups under the bridge. They're in bad shape. Can you come with the van?" Megan didn't hesitate. "I'm on my way. Keep them calm and I'll be there in 10 minutes. As they waited, Emma and Lucas sat close to the mother dog, speaking to her in gentle tones. The pups wriggled and squeaked, their tiny bodies nestled against their mother's warmth. Emma felt a swell of hope. This was just the beginning of their journey, but it was already a step towards safety. The faint hum of an engine broke the silence, and Emma saw the shelter van pulling up on the road above the bridge. Relief washed over her as Megan stepped out, carrying a large padded crate. "Let up get them home," Megan said, her voice firm but kind. "They're going to be okay." The mother dog and her puppies were finally secured in the van, resting in a padded crate lined with blankets. Emma sat in the back with them, keeping a careful watch, as Megan navigated the winding road back to the shelter. The atmosphere in the van was heavy with relief, but also uncertainty. Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something was still amiss. "She seems calmer now," Lucas said from the front seat, glancing back. "Do you think she knows we're helping?" Emma nodded, stroking the mother dog's head through the crate. I think she does, but look at her paws, whatever she's been through. It's not just hunger or dehydration. She's been running for her life. Megan, always the voice of practicality, spoke up. We'll have the vet check her first thing for now. Let's focus on getting them settled. As the van pulled into the shelter's driveway, a group of volunteers gathered their faces, a mix of curiosity and concern. The sight of the emaciated mother dog, stepping cautiously out of the crate with her puppies, drew murmurs of sympathy. "Librup, get them to the exam room," Megan said. Taking charge, she led the way while Emma and Lucas carefully carried the crate inside the brightly lit room. The mother dog was reluctant to leave the safety of her crate. Emma crouched down, offering her a treat. "It's okay, girl. You're safe now." The dog hesitated, her ears twitching nervously, but eventually stepped out, her pups trailing close behind her. The vet, Dr. Harper, knelt nearby, speaking in a calm voice as she prepared to examine the mother. "What's her condition?" Lucas asked, his voice tight with worry. Dr. Harper ran her hands gently over the dog's body, checking for injuries. "She's severely malnourished, dehydrated, and her paws are in bad shape. But that's not all." Emma's stomach tightened. "What do you mean?" The vet gently lifted the dog's ear, revealing a faint tattoo, barely visible under the grime. "This is a registration mark. It's used by breeders, but not the legitimate ones. This poor girl is likely a survivor of a puppy mill." The room fell silent. Emma felt her heart sink. Puppy mills were notorious for their cruel conditions: overcrowded, cages, lack of medical care, and relentless breeding that left dogs broken in body and spirit. "That explains her condition," Megan said grimly. "But how did she end up under a bridge?" Dr. Harper nodded. "It's possible she escaped or was abandoned when she could no longer produce litters. Either way, she's been through hell." Lucas clenched his fists. "People like that shouldn't be allowed to own animals. They treat them like machines." Emma looked down at the mother dog, who was now licking one of her pups with surprising tenderness, despite everything she had fought to protect her babies. Her resilience was heartbreaking and inspiring all at once. "We'll take care of her," Emma said firmly. "She deserves a chance to heal." Dr. Harper smiled softly. "She's in good hands now. Let's clean her up and run some tests on the pups. They seem healthy, but it's better to be sure." As the vet team worked, Emma and Lucas stayed close, offering gentle words of encouragement. The mother dog, now named Rosie, began to relax, her trust in the humans growing with every passing moment. Her pups were given a clean bill of health, and their tiny tails wagged as they explored their new surroundings. But as the team finished their examination, Dr. Harper called Emma and Megan aside. "There's something else you need to know. What is it?" Megan asked, her brow furrowing. "Rosie's body shows signs of severe overbreeding," Dr. Harper explained. "Her condition is critical. If we don't intervene soon, she might not recover." Emma's chest tightened. "What can we do?" "She needs intensive care, proper nutrition, rest, and possibly surgery," the vet replied. "But there's hope. Dogs are incredibly resilient, especially when they feel safe and loved." Emma glanced back at Rosie, who was now curled protectively around her pups, her eyes half closed. "We'll do whatever it takes." Later that evening, Emma and Lucas sat outside the shelter, the weight of the day settling over them. The moon hung low in the sky, its light casting long shadows across the quiet parking lot. "She's been through so much," Lucas said, breaking the silence, "and yet she still found a way to care for her pups." Emma nodded, her voice thick with emotion. "It's like she never gave up hope, even when the world was so cruel to her." Lucas looked at her, his expression softening. "Maybe that's what we're here for, to help her see that not all humans are the same." Emma smiled faintly. her resolve hardening. We won't let her down the next morning. Rosie's condition had slightly improved. She was resting in the shelter's quiet recovery room, her pups snuggled against her side. The team of volunteers had worked tirelessly through the night to ensure she felt safe and comfortable. Her crate had been placed with a soft bed, and the room was filled with blankets and toys to help ease her stress. Emma arrived early, coffee in hand, and determination in her heart. She peeked into Rosie's room, her lips curling into a smile, when she saw the dog lift her head at the sound of the door. "Good morning, sweet girl," Emma said softly. She crouched down, holding out her hand. Rosie sniffed cautiously before resting her chin on Emma's palm. It was a small gesture, but to Emma it felt like a breakthrough. "Hey, Emma." Lucas called from the hallway, his voice interrupting the moment Megan's in the office. "She needs to talk to us." Emma gave Rosie a final pat and headed toward the office. Megan was seated at her desk, her expression serious as she shuffled through a stack of papers. "What's up?" Emma asked, sitting across from her Megan's side, rubbing her temples. "I've been doing some digging into the registration mark on Rosie's ear. It's tied to a known puppy mill that was raided a few months ago. Most of the dogs were rescued, but clearly some didn't make it into the system." Lucas leaned against the door frame, his arms crossed, so she slipped through the cracks. "Exactly," Megan said. "And here's the kicker. There's no record of her, or her pups, anywhere. That means no one is looking for them." Emma's jaw tightened. "Then it's up to us. We can't let her down." Megan nodded. "I've already contacted a local rescue that specializes in rehabilitating dogs from situations like this. They're willing to help. But it'll take time and resources over the next few days." Rosie began to adapt to her new environment. She still flinched at sudden movements, and her eyes carried a haunted look. But there were moments of progress. She allowed the staff to hand-feed her, and her tail wagged faintly when her pups played around her. Lucas, who usually kept his distance from the emotional side of the work, found himself drawn to Rosie's quiet strength. One afternoon he sat by her bed, a bag of treats in his lap. "Hey, girl," he murmured, holding out a biscuit. Rosie hesitated before inching forward to take it from his hand. Lucas smiled, a rare warmth lighting up his face. "Good job, Rosie." Emma watched from the doorway, her heart swelling. "She's warming up to you," she said. Stepping inside, Lucas shrugged, though his smile lingered. "She's tougher than she looks. Reminds me of someone I know." Emma rolled her eyes but couldn't help smiling. "She lucky to have you." Despite the progress, there were setbacks. Rosie struggled to trust anyone besides Emma and Lucas, and her health remained fragile one evening as Emma prepared to leave for the day. Megan pulled her aside. "We need to talk about Rosie." Megan set her tone, cautious. "The vet thinks her condition might be more serious than we thought. She's responding well to care, but she's not out of the woods yet." Emma felt a pang of worry. "What can we do?" "We need to keep her stress levels low and focus on her recovery," Megan explained. "But we also need to start thinking about what's next. Once she's stable, we'll need to find her a foster home." Emma's chest tightened at the thought. "She's been through so much. I just want to make sure she ends up somewhere safe." Later that night, Emma sat on her couch, scrolling through pictures of Rosie and her pups on her phone. Her mind raced with thoughts of how to help them. She decided to reach out to her network of animal lovers on social media, sharing Rosie's story in hopes of finding her the perfect home. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from people moved by Rosie's resilience, and eager to help. Donations for her care began to flood in, along with offers from potential fosters. Lucas Towns, who rarely used social media, was surprised by the outpouring of support. "Looks like Rosie's already a star," he said, leaning over Emma's shoulder to read the comments. Emma smiled her heart. Then it had been in days. "She deserves it. After everything she's been through, she deserves to know what love feels like. In the following weeks, Rosie continued to make progress. Her pups were growing stronger and more playful, their antics bringing laughter and joy to the shelter. Rosie herself began to trust more, her tail wagging more frequently and her eyes losing some of their fear. One evening as Emma sat with Rosie in the recovery room, she noticed something remarkable. Rosie, who had always been wary of human touch, nudged her head against Emma's hand, seeking affection. Emma's eyes welled with tears as she stroked the dog's soft fur. "You're going to be okay," she whispered. "I promise." As Rosie's health improved, new challenges arose. The once quiet pups were now bundles of energy, exploring every corner of the recovery room and nipping at each other with playful growls. Their antics brought smiles to the shelter staff, but also posed logistic ICAL challenges. Space was limited, and the room that had once been a sanctuary was becoming too small. For the growing family, Emma and Lucas worked together to create a more suitable environment. They converted one of the larger rooms into a temporary play area, complete with soft mats, toys, and secure barriers, despite their best efforts. Keeping up with the pups' boundless energy proved to be a full-time job. Do they ever sleep? Lucas joked, watching as one of the pups clumsily tumbled over its sibling. Emma laughed, though her exhaustion was evident, not when there's trouble to be found. Meanwhile, the search for a foster home for Rosie and her pups was proving more difficult than expected, although the social media campaign had garnered attention. Most of the interest was in adopting the puppies rather than fostering the entire family. Megan sat with Emma one afternoon reviewing applications. "We've got plenty of offers for the pups, but Rosie's a tougher case. People are hesitant because of her history." Emma's jaw tightened. "She's not just a case. Megan, she's a survivor. She deserves a chance, I know," Megan said gently. "But we need to be realistic. If we can't find a foster soon, we might have to consider separating them." The thought made Emma's stomach churn. She's been through so much already. Separating her from her pups could break her spirit as the shelter affair. These challenges Rosie's past began to surface in unexpected ways. One evening a man arrived at the shelter claiming to recognize her. His disheveled appearance and defensive demeanor immediately put Lucas on edge. "I saw the photos online," the man said, gesturing to his phone. "That dog's mine." Emma stepped forward, her tone measured but firm. "Do you have any proof of ownership?" The man hesitated, his eyes darting around the room. "She's got a scar on her left. Poor, I gave her that name. Rosie." Lucas exchanged a glance with Emma, his instincts screaming that something was off. "If she's yours, why didn't you report her missing?" he asked. The man's face darkened. "It's none of your business, just give me my dog." Emma stood her ground. "Rosie is under our care. Now if you want to claim her, you'll need to provide proper documentation." The man cursed under his breath and stormed out, but the encounter left the team unsettled later that night. Emma couldn't shake the interaction. She found herself back at the shelter, sitting beside Rosie's bed. The dog res peacefully, her pups nestled against her side. Emma reached out to stroke Rosie's fur, her voice a soft murmur. "No one's going to hurt you again, I promise." The next morning, Megan contacted local authorities to investigate the man's claim. They discovered he had ties to illegal dog fighting rings. Rosie's scars and initial fear of humans suddenly made horrifying sense. Lucas clenched his fists when he heard the news. "She's not going anywhere near him, she won't." Emma assured him, "We'll protect her," as the shelter worked to ensure Rosie's safety. Another unexpected challenge arose. One of the puppies, the smallest of the litter, began showing signs of illness. The once energetic pup now lay lethargic, refusing to eat or play. Emma and Lucas rushed the pup to the vet. their hearts heavy with worry. The diagnosis was an infection that, while treatable, required immediate care and close monitoring. The news was a blow to the team, who had become deeply attached to the pups back at the shelter. Rosie seemed to sense her pup's absence. She paced the room, her eyes darting to the door. Every time it opened, Emma sat with her, trying to provide comfort. "He's in good hands," she whispered. "He's going to be okay." The next few days were a whirlwind of care and coordination. While the vet worked to stabilize the pup, Emma and Lucas focused on keeping Rosie and the rest of the litter healthy. They sterilized the ply area, adjusted feeding routines, and monitored the pups closely for any signs of illness. Despite the chaos, there were moments of light. Rosie began to show a maternal fierceness, watching over her pups with unwavering vigilance. Her trust in Emma and Lucas deepened, and she started seeking out their company. Wagging her tail tentatively when they entered the room one evening as Lucas cleaned the play area, Emma sat with Rosie, brushing her fur. "You're stronger than anyone I know," she said softly. Rosie leaned into the touch, her eyes closing in contentment. Lucas glanced over, a rare smile tugging at his lips. "She's come a long way, we all have," Emma replied, her voice filled with quiet determination. The sick puppy returned to the shelter a week later, much to everyone's relief. Rosie's reaction was immediate. She barked softly, her tail wagging as the tiny pup was placed back with the litter. The reunion was a moment of pure joy, a testament to Rosie's unbreakable spirit. "Welcome back, little guy," Lucas said, his voice warm. Emma knelt beside the crate, tears brimming in her eyes. We did it as the shelter celebrated small victories. The community began rallying around Rosie's story. Donations increased, and volunteers offered their time to help care for the family. The once daunting challenges now felt surmountable. Bolstered by the outpouring of support and the team's unwavering commitment, the shelter was busier than ever. Rosie's story had drawn significant attention, and while the support was heartening, it brought new pressures. Emma and Lucas found themselves juggling their regular duties with managing media inquiries and coordinating volunteers. The weight of their responsibilities was starting to show. One morning, Lucas arrived at the shelter to find Emma sitting in the playroom, staring at Rosie and her pups with an expression he couldn't quite place. "You okay?" he asked, leaning against the door frame. Emma nodded slowly, but her voice was heavy. "I've been thinking, Lucas, what happens when the attention fades, when Rosie and her pups aren't the headline story anymore?" Lucas frowned. "We figure it out, we always do." Emma sighed. "I just worry. Rosie deserves so much more than this temporary setup. She needs a permanent home, a family that loves her and understands her, and her pups." Lucas asked. Emma's gaze fell to the playful litter. "That's another challenge. They're adorable now, but they'll grow puppies. Need training, patience, and love. Not everyone is prepared for that." As if on cue, a volunteer entered the room with a clipboard. "Emma, we've received adoption applications for all the puppies," she said with a smile. "People are lining up for them." Emma glanced at the applications, her heart sinking slightly. She couldn't explain it, but the idea of separating Rosie from her pups felt wrong. The bond between them was too strong, too unique. Lucas noticed her hesitation. "What's on your mind?" Emma hesitated before speaking. "I know it's not practical, but I can't help thinking, what if they stayed together? Rosie's been through so much. Losing her pups might be too much for her." Lucas rubbed the back of his neck, considering her words. "It's a noble idea, Emma, but finding someone who can take in Rosie and all her pups, that's a tall order." "I know," Emma admitted, "but maybe we're not looking in the right places. What if there's someone out there who understands what they've been through, someone who can give them the life they deserve. The conversation was interrupted by a call from Megan, who had news about the man who had previously claimed Rosie. The authorities confirmed he has a history with illegal dog fighting. She reported he won't be coming back, but it's a reminder of how dangerous her past was. Emma's stomach twisted at the thought. Thank you, Megan. Keep me updated after ending the call. Emma turned to Lucas. We can't let her go through more trauma. We need to find the perfect home. That afternoon, Emma and Lucas sat down to review the adoption applications. Most were for individual puppies, but none stood out as suitable for Rosie. The process was disheartening, and as the hours passed, their frustration grew. I feel like we're missing something, Emma said, running a hand through her hair. There has to be someone who can take them all. Lucas leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. Maybe we need to think outside the box. What about a sanctuary or a family with a lot of space? Emma's eyes lit up. That's it, a sanctuary could be perfect. Rosie and her pups would have room to run, and they'd stay together. Emma spent the next few days reaching out to sanctuaries and rescue organizations. Most were at capacity, but one response gave her hope. A large animal sanctuary located a few hours away expressed interest in taking in Rosie and her pups. The sanctuary had experience with rehabilitating animals from traumatic backgrounds and was willing to meet with Emma and Lucas. The shelter team rallied around the idea, working tirelessly to prepare Rosie and the pups for the trip. Emma couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and trepidation. The sanctuary seemed like an ideal solution, but leaving Rosie and her pups in someone else's care was a daunting prospect. The day of the visit arrived, and Emma and Lucas loaded Rosie and her pups into the shelter van. The journey was quiet, the weight of the decision heavy in the air. Rosie seemed to sense the significance of the trip, sitting calmly beside Emma as the pups slept in their crate. When they arrived, the sanctuary staff greeted them warmly. The facility was expansive, with open fields, cozy shelters, and a peaceful atmosphere. Rosie hesitated at first, her protective instincts kicking in as the staff approached. But when one of the sanctuary workers knelt down and extended a hand, Rosie surprised everyone by stepping forward, sniffing cautiously before wagging her tail. "She's incredible," the sanctuary director said, watching Rosie interact with the staff. "We'd be honored to have her and her pups here." Emma felt a lump form in her throat. "Are you sure it's a big commitment?" The director smiled. "We're more than ready for it. Rosie and her pups will be safe here, and they'll get the love and care they deserve." Lucas placed a hand on Emma's shoulder. "I think this is the right place." Emma nodded, blinking back tears. "It feels right," as they prepared to leave. Emma knelt beside Rosie, stroking her fur. "You're going to be so happy here," she whispered. "We miss you, but this is your new beginning." Rosie licked Emma's hand. Her eyes filled with trust. It was a moment Emma would carry with her forever. Back at the shelter, Emma and Lucas reflected on the journey. "We did it." Lucas said we gave them a second chance. Emma smiled. "No they gave us one too." A week passed. After Rosie and her pups were settled at the sanctuary, Emma and Lucas returned to their daily routines at the shelter. But something felt different. While they knew they had made the right decision, both found themselves thinking about Rosie often. One morning, Emma received an unexpected email from the sanctuary's director. The subject line read an incredible development with Rosie. Emma immediately opened it, her heart pounding. The email began with a warm greeting, but quickly moved to the heart of the matter. "Rosie has been an extraordinary addition to our sanctuary," the director wrote. "But something remarkable happened last night. We noticed her exhibiting unusual behavior near one of the far fields. When we followed her, we discovered something shocking. Emma read on her eyes. Widening the sanctuary, staff had found another stray dog, injured and frightened, hiding in the underbrush. Rosie had been the one to alert them, barking insistently and refusing to leave until help arrived. The injured dog, a small terrier mix, was now receiving medical care. Emma immediately called Lucas, relaying the news. It's like Rosie has a sixth sense for helping others, she said, her voice tinged with awe. Lucas chuckled. She's always been special. It doesn't surprise me that she's already making a difference there. But the sanctuary's email had more to reveal. The injured dog wasn't just any stray. It had a faint tattoo inside its ear. A common practice in illegal breeding operations, the sanctuary director suspected the dog had escaped from a nearby facility involved in dog trafficking. This revelation sent a shiver down Emma's spine. Do you think Rosie recognized something in that dog? She wondered aloud. Maybe she sensed they shared a similar past. Lucas nodded thoughtfully. It's possible dogs have an incredible capacity for empathy, especially ones like Rosie who've experienced trauma. The email ended with an invitation the sanctuary director wanted Emma and Lucas to visit and discuss the situation further, it seems. Rosie's journey isn't over yet, Emma said, determination gleaming in her eyes. The next day, Emma and Lucas made the trip back to the sanctuary. As they arrived, they were greeted by the director, who led them to a quiet area where Rosie was resting with her pups. Seeing Rosie again brought a rush of emotions for Emma. The golden retriever greeted her with a wagging tail, her eyes bright and full of recognition. She's been amazing, the Dior director said, but this new situation has us all on edge. If there's an illegal operation nearby, we need to act quickly. Emma and Lucas listened as the director detailed the findings. The tattoo on the terrier was linked to a known network of breeders who exploited dogs for profit. While the sanctuary had alerted local authorities, they were concerned about the safety of their own animals and staff. Emma's protective instincts flared. What can we do to help? She asked the director, hesitated for now. We're increasing security and working closely with law enforcement, but Rosie might hold a key to uncovering more about this operation. She's been alert and focused near certain areas of the sanctuary, almost as if she senses something. Lucas glanced at Rosie, who was watching them intently. You think she could lead us to more dogs? It's possible, the director admitted. Her instincts have already proven remarkable. That evening, Emma and Lucas joined the sanctuary staff for a patrol of the grounds. Rosie accompanied them, her movements purposeful and precise. As they neared the far field where the terrier had been found, Rosie began to bark softly, her ears pricked and her tail stiff, following her lead. The group moved cautiously through the underbrush. The night was quiet, save for the rustle of leaves and the occasional hoot of an owl. Rosie stopped suddenly, her body tense. She sniffed the air and then darted forward, stopping near an old abandoned shed. The group approached the shed carefully, their flashlights cutting through the darkness. Inside, they found evidence of recent activity: discarded food containers, a frayed leash, and the faint smell of dog urine, while there were no animals present. It was clear that the shed had been used as a holding area. This is definitely connected, the director said, her voice grim. We need to report this immediately as the team documented the site. Rosie continued to search the area. Emma watched her with the mix of admiration and unease. She's incredible, she whispered to Lucas. But this is bigger than we imagined. The discovery added urgency to the situation. The sanctuary director assured Emma and Lucas that the authorities would handle the investigation. But Emma couldn't shake the feeling that Rosie's journey was far from over that night. As they returned to the shelter, Emma reflected on everything that had happened. "Do you think Rosie was meant to find that dog?" she asked Lucas. Lucas nodded. "If anyone can shine a light on what's happening out there, it's her. Rosie's not just surviving. She's making a difference." The morning after the shed discovery, Emma found herself at the shelter, staring out the window, her thoughts circling around Rosie in the sanctuary. Lucas walked in with a mug of coffee, placing it on the desk beside her. "You've been quiet," he said, sitting across from her. Emma sighed. "I just keep thinking about Rosie. It's like she's leading us on this path for a reason." Lucas nodded. "And it's not just about her anymore. It's about uncovering something much bigger." "But what's the next step?" Emma's phone buzzed. Breaking their conversation, it was a message from the sanctuary director. "Authorities have started investigating nearby areas. Rosie's behavior has been instrumental in their search." The message included a photo of Rosie sniffing near an abandoned field, her pups sitting patiently nearby. "She's still at it?" Emma said, showing the photo to Lucas. "I think we should go back. There's more to uncover that afternoon." They packed a few supplies and returned to the sanctuary. The director greeted them with updates. The authorities had found another location connected to the illegal operation, and Rosie had been a significant help in leading them there. However, tension was high, as the network seemed larger and more organized than initially thought. Emma and Lucas joined the staff for another patrol. This time, Rosie seemed more focused, her movements deliberate, as sniffed the air and ground. She led them to the edge of the sanctuary, where an old trail began winding into the woods. The group hesitated. The trail was overgrown and dark, but Rosie's determination left no room for doubt. "Let's trust her," Emma said, her voice firm. Lucas handed her a flashlight, and they followed Rosie into the forest. The woods were eerily silent, save for the occasional rustling of leaves underfoot. Rosie moved with purpose, her nose close to the ground. After about 20 minutes, she stopped abruptly, her ears perking up. A faint whimper echoed through the trees. Emma's heart raced. "Did you hear that?" Lucas nodded, gripping the flashlight tighter. "It's coming from over there." He followed the sound, eventually stumbling upon a small clearing. Hidden among the bushes was another abandoned shed, this one more dilapidated than the last. Rosie began barking, circling the structure and pouring at the door. Inside they found 3 dogs, thin and frightened, their tails tucked between their legs. Emma's heart broke at the sight. "We need to get them out of here," she said, her voice trembling. The group worked quickly to free the dogs, carefully coaxing them out with food and gentle words. One of the dogs, a scrappy-looking terrier, clung to Rosie, as if recognizing her as a protector. Back at the sanctuary, the rescued dogs were examined and cared for. Emma and Lucas stayed to help their bond with Rosie, growing stronger with each passing hour. It was clear to everyone that Rosie had a unique ability to sense danger and guide others to safety over dinner. The sanctuary director shared her thoughts. "Rosie's instincts are extraordinary, but I think there's more to her story. She might have been part of a similar operation before she ended up under that bridge." Emma frowned. "You mean she could have escaped from one of these places?" "Exactly," the director replied. "Her behavior suggests she's experienced something traumatic and is now driven to help others avoid the same fate." The revelation deepened Emma's resolve. If that's true, then she's not just surviving. She's a hero, and we need to support her. However we can. The next day, Rosie led them to yet another location, this time a secluded cabin deep in the woods. There they found more evidence of the trafficking network: chains, crates, and discarded documents. The authorities were called in, and the operation began to take shape. Emma couldn't help but feel a mix of anger and hope. Anger at the cruelty these dogs had endured, but hope because of Rosie's courage and determination. She was becoming a symbol of resilience, inspiring everyone around her as the days went on. Rosie's efforts began drawing attention. Beyond the sanctuary, local news outlets picked up the story, dubbing her the bridge guardian. Donations poured in to support the sanctuary's efforts, and volunteers from all over offered their help. Emma and Lucas found Zell in the center of a growing movement. What had started as a simple rescue mission under a bridge was now shining a light on a dark and cruel industry. And at the heart of it all was Rosie, the golden retriever, who refused to give up one evening. As Emma and Lucas sat by the sanctuary's fire pit, reflecting on the whirlwind of events, Rosie approached them, her pups trailing behind her. She nuzzled Emma's hand, her eyes full of gratitude. "She knows," Lucas said. "Softly, she knows we're all in this together." Emma smiled, tears welling in her eyes. "And we won't stop until every dog like her is safe." The sanctuary hummed with activity as the team worked tirelessly to care for the rescued dogs and piece together the evidence they'd uncovered. Rosie, as always, was at the center of it all, her protective instincts guiding the way. But as more locations were discovered and dismantled, the stakes grew higher. One morning, Emma received a call from the sanctuary director. Her tone was serious. "Emma, we've got a problem. The last site we uncovered, it seems like it wasn't just an outpost. It was a central hub." Emma's heart sank. "What does that mean?" "It means we're dealing with a much larger operation than we thought. The people behind this aren't going to let us shut them down without a fight." The words echoed in Emma's mind as she drove to the sanctuary. When she arrived, she found Lucas and the director in the office, reviewing maps and documents recovered from the most recent raid. Rosie sat by the door, her ears perked up, sensing the tension. The authorities are stretched thin. Lucas explained they've asked for more time to organize their next move. "But in the meantime, we've got to stay vigilant. We don't know how these people will react." The director nodded. "They're dangerous, and we've already disrupted their operations. There's a good chance they'll try to retaliate." As the sun set that evening, Emma couldn't shake the feeling of unease. She decided to stay overnight at the sanctuary, joining a few other volunteers who were keeping watch. Rosie seemed restless, pacing near the entrance to the shelter, and occasionally growling at the shadows around midnight. Rosie's growls turned into sharp, urgent barks. Emma jolted awake, grabbing a flashlight and rushing outside. Lucas was already there, his flashlight cutting through the darkness. "What is it, girl?" Emma asked, kneeling beside Rosie. The golden retriever darted toward the perimeter fence, barking furiously. Emma and Lucas followed their heart, pounding when they reached the fence. They saw it movement in the bushes. A dark figure bolted into the woods, but not before something was thrown over the fence. Rosie barked louder, her body tense. Emma approached cautiously, her flashlight revealing a bundle wrapped in a dirty blanket. She exchanged a glance with Lucas before kneeling to unwrap it. Inside was a small puppy, barely breathing. Its fur was matted, and its body trembled from the cold. Emma's heart broke at the sight. "We need to get it inside," she said, her voice trembling. Lucas scooped up the puppy and carried it to the shelter while Emma and Rosie kept watch. Whoever had been there was gone. But the implications were clear. This was a warning. The traffickers were sending a message, and it wasn't just about the dogs anymore. Back inside, the team worked quickly to warm and hydrate the puppy. It was touch-ando for hours, but by morning the little dog showed signs of improvement. Rosie stayed by its side, her presence soothing as Emma watched Rosie care for the puppy. A sense of resolve washed over her. "We can't back down," she said to Lucas. "If anything, this proves how desperate they are to keep their operation going. We have to stop them." Lucas nodded. "But we need to be smart about it. We're not just dealing with cruelty. We're dealing with criminals." The sanctuary director joined them, her expression grim. The authorities are planning a raid on what they believe is the final site. They've asked for our help to coordinate, using what we've learned from Rosie. The plan was risky. The final site was deep in the forest, hidden among abandoned buildings. The authorities needed Rosie to help pinpoint the exact location where the dogs were being held. It was a lot to ask of her, but Emma knew Rosie was up to the task that evening. As the team prepared for the operation, Emma sat with Rosie, stroking her golden fur. "You've done so much already, girl," she whispered, "but we need you one more time." Rosie looked at her with those intelligent, trusting eyes as if to say, "I'm ready." The next morning, the team set out for the forest. The air was heavy with anticipation, every step toward the suspected site, feeling like a step into the unknown. Rosie led the way, her nose to the ground, her movements purposeful. When they reached the edge of the site, they saw it, an old warehouse, surrounded by high fences. The sound of barking echoed faintly from inside. Rosie growled, her body tense. The authorities moved in cautiously, using bolt cutters to open the gate. Inside, the scene was heartbreaking. Dozens of dogs crammed into cages, their eyes filled with fear. Rosie sprang into action, barking and leading the rescuers to the dogs most in need of immediate attention. But as the team worked, the sound of engines revving in the distance sent a chill through the air. "They coming back," Lucas said, his voice urgent. The rescue worked faster, freeing as many dogs as they could. Before the traffickers arrived, Emma stayed close to Rosie, her heart pounding as the sound of engines grew louder. Suddenly the vehicles appeared, headlights cutting through the trees. A group of men jumped out, shouting and advancing toward the warehouse. But the authorities were ready with a coordinated effort. They intercepted the traffickers, arresting them before they could reach the site. The operation was a success, but the tension lingered as the last of the dogs were loaded into transport vehicles bound for the sanctuary. As the convoy made its way back, Emma sat beside Rosie, her hand resting on the dog's head. "We did it," she said softly. "You did it." Rosie nuzzled her hand, her tail wagging gently. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time it felt like they were winning. The drive back to the sanctuary was heavy with silence, the weight of the night's events hanging over everyone. The rescued dogs huddled in their cages, their eyes reflecting a mix of fear and hope. Rosie lay at Emma's feet, her golden fur streaked with dirt, but her tail wagging faintly. She had done her part, but Emma knew the hardest decisions still lay ahead. Back at the sanctuary, the team worked tirelessly to tend to the newly rescued dogs. Each one was carefully examined, cleaned, and given food and water. Many were malnourished, their ribs visible through matted fur. Others bore scars that told silent stories of suffering. Me moved from one kennel to the next, her heart breaking with every wag of a frail tail we've never taken. In this many dogs at once. The sanctuary director said, her voice heavy with concern. "We're at capacity. We'll need to find homes or foster families quickly, or we'll risk overwhelming our resources." Emma nodded, the gravity of the situation sinking in. "We can't let them down now. These dogs have been through too much." As the sun began to rise, Emma sat down with Lucas and the director to discuss their steps. The traffickers had been arrested, but their network was vast, and there was no guarantee the arrests would bring it to an end. They had to decide how to use the evidence they'd gathered to make the most impact. We could release the footage and photos to the media. Lucas suggested, "Let the world see what's really happening. It might bring in donations and support." The director hesitated. "That's a risk. If the wrong people see it, they could retaliate. We've already seen how far they're willing to go." Emma glanced at Rosie, who was resting nearby. The golden retriever's presence had been a beacon of hope. Throughout the ordeal, we need to shine a light on this," she said firmly. "These dogs deserve justice, and if we can get people to care, we might stop this from happening again." The team decided to move forward with a public campaign, using the footage to expose the cruelty of the trafficking ring, but they knew they had to act quickly and carefully over the next few days. They worked to compile the evidence, crafting a narrative that would resonate with viewers and spur them to action. Emma spent hours reviewing footage, her stomach turning at the images of suffering. But amid the darkness, there were glimmers of hope. Dogs wagging their tails as they were freed, volunteers comforting trembling animals. Rosie, leading the way with her quiet courage. When the campaign launched, it spread like wildfire. News outlets picked up the story, and social media was flooded with images and videos of the rescued dogs. Donations poured in, along with offers to foster and adopt the sanctuary became a symbol of resilience, a place where the darkest chapters of these dogs' lives were rewritten with compassion. Rosie, in particular, captured hearts around the world. Her story, how she had been found under a bridge and had gone on to save so many others, became a rallying cry for the campaign. People were inspired by her loyalty and bravery, and she became the face of the movement. But the attention brought its own challenges. The sanctuary was inundated with visitors, some well-meaning, others simply curious. Security had to be increased, and the team worked tirelessly to manage the influx of animals and resources. One evening, as Emma walked through the sanctuary, she found herself drawn to Rosie's kennel. The golden retriever was curled up on her bed, her eyes watching Emma with quiet understanding. Emma knelt beside her, running a hand through her fur. "You've done so much, Rosie," she said softly, more than anyone could have asked, "but there's still so much to do." Rosie licked Emma's hand, her tail thumping gently against the ground. It was as if she understood that their journey wasn't over. The next morning, Emma and the team received an unexpected visit. A representative from a national animal welfare organization had heard about their work and wanted to partner with the sanctuary. The organization offered funding, resources, and a platform to expand their efforts beyond the local community. "This is an incredible opportunity," the director said. "After the meeting, we could make a real difference, but it's going to take everything we've got." Emma nodded. "It's worth it. If we can stop even one more dog from suffering, like these ones have, it's worth it." With a new partnership in place, the sanctuary began to grow. Additional kennels were built, more volunteers joined the team, and the dogs were given the care and attention they needed to heal. Rosie continued to play a central role, her presence a source of comfort, and strength for everyone. But as the sanctuary expanded, so did the challenges. Emma found herself stretched thin, balancing the demands of her job with her passion for helping the dogs. She often stayed late into the night, her heart heavy with the weight of their stories. One night, as she walked through the sanctuary, she found Rosie standing at the edge of the property, her ears perked up and her body tense. Emma followed her gaze and saw a car parked on the road. Its headlights off. A figure stood beside it, watching the sanctuary. Emma's pulse quickened. Was it someone connected to the trafficking ring? She reached for her phone, ready to call for help, but the car sped off before she could react. The incident left her shaken, but it also steeled her resolve. The sanctuary's work was far from over, and she knew they had to stay vigilant back inside. Emma sat down with Rosie, stroking her fur as the golden retriever leaned against her side. "We're not giving up," she said quietly. "No matter what it takes." Rosie looked up at her, her eyes filled with trust and determination. Together they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The days following the unsettling encounter brought a mix of tension and determination to the sanctuary. Emma and the team doubled down on security measures, installing cameras and coordinating with local authorities to ensure the safety of the animals and the staff. Despite the unease, the sanctuary's mission carried on with unwavering focus. Rosie remained Emma's constant companion, her presence a source of comfort amid the growing challenges. Emma often found herself drawn to Rosie's quiet strength, marveling at how a dog who had once been abandoned under a bridge could become such a symbol of hope and resilience. So, one morning as Emma prepared to begin her rounds, she noticed Rosie standing near the gate, her body rigid and her ears perked. The golden retriever let out a low growl, a sound Emma had rarely heard from her following Rosie's gaze. Emma spotted a man lingering just outside the sanctuary's property. His eyes, fixed on the rows of kennels, Emma's heart raced as she approached the gate, trying to keep her voice calm. "Can I help you?" she called out. The man looked startled, his gaze flicking to Rosie, before he muttered something and walked away. Emma watched him go, her unease growing. Was he connected to the trafficking ring, or was he just another curious onlooker drawn by the sanctuary's recent fame? The incident reinforced the need for vigilance. Emma gathered the team for a meeting, emphasizing the importance of staying alert and reporting anything unusual. "We've come too far to let anything jeopardize the safety of these dogs," she said firmly. The team agreed, their determination mirroring Emma. They knew the sanctuary's work had made it a target, but they were committed to protecting the animals who had already endured so much that evening. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Emma took a moment to reflect on the sanctuary's journey. She walked among the kennels, checking on each dog and offering a comforting word or a gentle pat. When she reached Rosie's kennel, the golden retriever was already waiting for her, her tail wagging softly. Emma knelt beside her, feeling a surge of gratitude for the dog who had become her steadfast ally. "You've been through so much, Rosie," she murmured, "but you never gave up, and neither will we." Later that night, the sanctuary was plunged into darkness as a sudden power outage swept through the area. Emma grabbed a flashlight and made her way outside, her pulse quickening as she checked the generator. It wasn't malfunctioning. It had been deliberately tampered with. The realization sent a chill down her spine. Someone had targeted the sanctuary, likely hoping to create chaos under the cover of darkness. Emma called Lucas, who arrived within minutes, his face grim as he surveyed the scene. "We need to secure the property," he said. Whoever did this might still be nearby. As Lucas and Emma worked to restore power, Rosie began barking furiously, her sharp cries cutting through the silence. Emma followed the sound, her flashlight sweeping over the kennels until it landed on a shadowy figure near the fence. The figure bolted as soon as they realized they'd been spotted. Disappearing into the woods beyond the property, Lucas gave chase. But the intruder was too quick. Vanishing into the darkness when he returned, his expression was a mix of frustration and resolve. "They were definitely up to no good," he said. "We need to report this." The next morning, Emma met with local authorities to discuss the incident. She shared her suspicions that the sanctuary's growing visibility had made it a target, possibly by individuals connected to the trafficking ring. The officers promised to increase patrols in the area and urged Emma to remain vigilant. Despite the tension, the sanctuary's work continued. The team redoubled their efforts to care for the dogs, their determination fueled by the knowledge that every small victory brought them closer to their goal. Rosie's bond with Emma only deepened in the wake of the events. The golden retriever seemed to sense Emma's unease, staying close to her side and offering quiet comfort. Emma often found herself marveling at Rosie's resilience, drawing strength from the dog's unwavering loyalty. One afternoon, as Emma sat in the sanctuary's office reviewing adoption applications, Rosie nudged her hand with her nose. Emma looked up to see the golden retriever holding her leash in her mouth, her eyes shining with quiet determination. "You want to go for a walk?" Emma asked, with a small smile. Rosie wagged her tail, and Emma couldn't help but laugh. "All right, girl, let's go the walk." Took them to a quiet trail behind the sanctuary, a place Emma often went to. Clear her head, Rosie trotted ahead, her golden fur gleaming in the sunlight. For a moment, the tension of the past weeks seemed to melt away, replaced by a sense of peace. As they reached a small clearing, Rosie stopped suddenly, her ears pricking up. Emma followed her gaze and saw something glinting in the grass. She knelt to pick it up, her breath catching as she realized what it was. A small engraved tag with the name Rosie, and a phone number. Emma stared at the tag, her mind racing. Where had it come from, and how had it ended up here? She glanced at Rosie, who was watching her intently, her tail wagging slightly. "Is this yours?" Emma murmured, though she knew the answer. Rosie had been found without a collar, her past a mystery. But this tag was proof that someone had once cared for her, someone who might still be searching for her. The discovery added a new layer of intrigue to Rosie's story, one that Emma knew she couldn't ignore. As they made their way back to the sanctuary, Emma resolved to find out the truth about Rosie's past, even as she prepared for the next phase of their journey. The small engraved tag sparked a whirlwind of questions. Who had cared for Rosie before? Why was the tag found so close to the sanctuary now? After all this time, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was guiding the events, surrounding this resilient golden retriever determined to find answers. Emma dialed the number etched on the tag as soon as she returned to her office. The line rang several times before a gyrally voice answered. "Hello," the voice said, hesitant and tinged with sadness. Emma's breath caught high. "My name is Emma. I run a dog sanctuary just outside of town. I think I may have found your dog, Rosie." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then the voice broke with emotion. "Rosie, is she alive?" "Yes," Emma replied, her voice softening. "She's here with us. She's healthy and safe." The man introduced himself as Walter, an elderly widower who had lost Rosie months ago. During a severe thunderstorm, Walter explained that Rosie had panicked at the sound of thunder bolting from his backyard. Despite his efforts to find her, he had assumed the worst after weeks of searching. "She's been my companion since my wife passed," Walter admitted, his voice trembling. "Losing her felt like losing a piece of my heart all over again." Emma felt a lump in her throat as she listened. "Rosie has been incredible here," she said gently. "She's brought so much comfort to everyone at the sanctuary, but if you're ready, I'd be honored to reunite you." Walter's answer was immediate. "Yes, please tell me when and where, and I'll be there." They arranged for Walter to visit the sanctuary. The following afternoon, Emma hung up the phone, her heart pounding with anticipation. She looked down at Rosie, who lay contentedly at her feet, seemingly unaware of the life-changing moment awaiting her. The next day, the sanctuary buzzed with quiet excitement as the team prepared for Walter's arrival. Emma made sure Rosie was groomed and ready, her golden coat shining in the afternoon sun when the time came. Emma led Rosie to the main gate, where a modest car pulled into the driveway. Walter stepped out. Slowly, his weathered face a mix of hope and apprehension. His eyes searched the grounds until they landed on Rosie. His expression crumbled, tears streaming down his face as he whispered, "Rosie, it's really you." Emma unclipped Rosie's leash, giving her a gentle nudge forward. The golden retriever hesitated for a moment, then bounded toward Walter with a joyful bark. Walter dropped to his knees, opening his arms wide as Rosie leapt into his embrace. The reunion was nothing short of magical, man and dog, clinging to each other as though no time had passed. Emma and the team watched, with tears in their eyes, the scene a poignant reminder of why they did what they did for Emma. This moment was a culmination of every challenge and triumph they had faced together as Walter stroked Rosie's fur. He looked up at Emma with gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given me back a part of my soul." Emma smiled, her heart full. Rosie gave her so much while she was here. It's only right she returns to the person who loves her most. Later that evening, Walter and Rosie stayed to visit the sanctuary, sharing stories of their time together. Walter marveled at the bond Rosie had formed with Emma, and the other animals expressing his amazement at the dog's capacity for love and loyalty. As the sun set over the sanctuary, casting a warm golden glow, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Rosie's story was one of resilience, hope, and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals, and while Emma would miss her golden companion deeply, she knew that this was the happy ending Rosie deserved before leaving. Walter approached Emma with a proposition. "I'd like to support the sanctuary." He said Rosie found a home here when I couldn't be there for her. "I want to make sure other animals get the same chance." Emma was taken aback, but deeply touched. Walter's offer of support would be invaluable to the sanctuary's mission, helping them expand their efforts to rescue and rehabilitate animals in need. "You have no idea what this means to us," Emma said, her voice brimming with gratitude. "Fear, it's the least I can do." Walter replied with a smile. Rosie would want it this way. The reunion marked the beginning of a new chapter for everyone involved, for Walter and Rosie. It was a chance to rebuild the life they had lost. For Emma and the sanctuary, it was a reminder of the transformative power of compassion and perseverance. As Walter's car disappeared down the road, with Rosie happily wagging her tail in the back seat, Emma stood by the gate. Her heart full. The sanctuary had lost a cherished resident, but they had gained something far greater, a renewed sense of purpose, and the knowledge that their work truly mattered as the car, carrying Walter and Rosie, disappeared into the horizon. Emma lingered by the sanctuary gate, her hands resting on the wooden frame. The golden retriever's joyful reunion with her owner had left an indelible mark on her heart, a testament to the sanctuary's mission of restoring hope. One life at a time, the sanctuary felt quieter without Rosie. Over the past months, she had become a fixture in their lives, a steady presence of warmth and loyalty. But Emma knew deep down that Rosie's absence wasn't a loss, but a fulfillment of the sanctuary's purpose to give animals the love and security they deserved, whether through adoption, reunion, or lifelong care. Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, Emma gathered the sanctuary staff around the common area. They sat on the patio, surrounded by a few of the resident animals who had grown curious about the gathering. "I wanted to thank all of you," Emma began, her voice carrying the weight of gratitude. "Rosie's story wasn't just about her and Walter. It's about us too, the work we do, the lives we touch, and the difference we make every single day." The team nodded their expressions, reflecting a shared sense of pride and accomplishment. Each person had played a role in Rosie's journey, from her rescue under the bridge to the care and love she'd received at the sanctuary over the next few weeks. Walter stayed true to his word, becoming an unexpected yet invaluable ally to the sanctuary. Not only did he provide financial support, but he also began volunteering, eager to give back to the place that had cared for Rosie. In his absence, Walter's wisdom and gentle demeanor quickly endeared him to the staff and animals alike, making him a beloved member of their extended family. Rosie, too, wasn't forgotten. Walter frequently brought her back to the sanctuary for visits, where she greeted Emma and the team with wagging enthusiasm. It was as if she understood that this place had been her lifeline and wanted to show her gratitude in her own way. The sanctuary thrived under Walter's contributions with his support. They expanded their facilities, creating dedicated spaces for animals with special needs. They also launched community outreach programs, educating the public on responsible pet ownership and the importance of compassion toward animals. One such program focused on teaching children about empathy and animal care. Emma watched one afternoon as a group of local students toured the sanctuary, their wide-eyed curiosity a stark contrast to the challenging realities many of the animals had faced. This, Emma thought to herself, is how change begins with small, meaningful connections. The impact of Rosie's story extended far beyond the sanctuary walls. Word of her miraculous journey and heartwarming reunion had spread through local and online communities, inspiring countless people to get involved in animal rescue efforts. Dona poured in and more volunteers signed up to help. Driven by the hope and love encapsulated in Rosie's tale one evening, as Emma reviewed the sanctuary's progress reports in her office, she noticed a handwritten note tucked among the papers. It was from Walter, "Dear Emma." It read, "I can never thank you enough for what you did for Rosie and me. You reminded me of the goodness that still exists in the world, and you've given me a reason to believe in second chances, not just for animals, but for people, too. See, I'm proud to stand with you in this mission. Yours gratefully, Walter." Emma sat back in her chair, the note clutched in her hands. It wasn't just about Rosie or Walter anymore. It was about the countless lives yet to be touched by their work. The sanctuary wasn't just a haven for animals. It was a place where hope was restored and bonds were forged. Months turned into years, and the sanctuary flourished as a beacon of compassion. Emma often found herself reflecting on Rosie's legacy and how one injured golden retreat had sparked a chain of events that transformed lives on the anniversary of Rosie's rescue. Walter and Rosie visited the sanctuary for a special celebration, surrounded by supporters, staff, and volunteers. They unveiled a plaque near the sanctuary's entrance. It read in honor of Rosie, a symbol of resilience, a love, and the power of second chances. The crowd erupted in applause, and Emma felt a wave of emotion wash over her. She glanced at Walter, who stood with Rosie, proudly at his side. Their bond as strong as ever. As the event wound down and guests began to leave, Emma walked Walter and Rosie to their car. The evening air was crisp and the sky was painted with hues of pink and orange for, Walter said, turning to Emma with a smile. "Rosie isn't just my dog anymore. She's part of something much bigger, something you built." Emma chuckled softly. "She's part of all of us, Walter, and she always will be." Rosie wagged her tail as if agreeing with the sentiment. Emma knelt down to scratch behind her ears one last time before they departed. "Take care, Rosie," she whispered. "You've done more than you'll ever know," as the car drove away. Emma stood at the gate, just as she had the day of their reunion, but this time she wasn't filled with longing or sadness. Instead, she felt a profound sense of purpose, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could create ripples of change back at the sanctuary. Emma joined the remaining staff in their final rounds, tending to the animals that called this place home. The stars twinkled overhead, a quiet testament to the stories yet to be written, and as she walked through the familiar paths of the sanctuary, Emma couldn't help but feel that this was only the beginning. What did you think of this story? If you believe in the power of kindness and second chances, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more inspiring tales like this one. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.